Hello and welcome to the Blockchain and Us, where pioneers and thought leaders talk about their journey in blockchain technology, crypto assets, and the token economy. And I'm your host, Manuel Staggers. If you enjoy this podcast, please give it a top rating and review on iTunes, and feel free to follow me on Twitter at Manuel Staggers. This episode is brought to you by Crypto Storage. Crypto Storage offers a proprietary solution to enable professional storage of crypto assets. The storage is secure both physically and digitally on the highest grade hardware security modules with detailed configuration possibilities for individual-based access control. To learn more, visit www.cryptostorage.ch. Today's guest is Christian Decker. Christian is a core tech engineer at Blockstream and a Bitcoin enthusiast from the very beginning in 2009. As a researcher at the distributed computing group at ETH Zurich, he wrote the world's first PhD dissertation about Bitcoin and the creation of a number of protocols, including PeerCensus and Duplex micropayment channels. The goal of his research is to improve the understanding of the underlying consensus mechanisms and to enable the network to scale with increasing demands. And now, to the interview. Welcome, Christian, to the Blockchain and Us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
It's been about a year since we last spoke, and back then you were working on Lightning Network. So are you still doing that?
Oh yeah, I'm still very much involved with Lightning. We're moving forward really quickly, and finally there is some end in sight, so we can actually start looking forward to what comes next.
How did you get into working with cryptocurrencies?
Oh, that's a long way back. So back in 2009, I was just starting my master's in distributed systems, and I came across this paper on some obscure mailing list, and I thought, okay, this sounds interesting. It seems to solve a few problems that were thought to be unsolvable before. And I sort of read into it and thought this was interesting, sent a few Bitcoins back and forth with some other people, and then quickly lost interest because there wasn't too much to do with it, and sort of forgot about it. And a few months later, I read about this in a blog post again and thought, okay, yeah, I was mining at the time, so I was like, okay, there's some real money involved now, so this might be interesting. I checked, and I indeed did my first Bitcoin sale for 5 cents each. Worst sale of my life so far. So
when was that?
That must have been, so I read the paper in 2009 and I rediscovered it again in 2010. Just a few months later, we had our first Bitcoin meetup here in Zurich with Mike Hearn and Stefan Thomas, nowadays from Ripple, and one other guy whose name I can't remember. Sorry about that. Yeah, we had an early meetup, and we sort of discussed, and this whole topic became more and more interesting to me. And so when it came to look for a topic for my PhD, it was pretty much a done deal that I would do it on Bitcoin. And if that didn't work out, I wouldn't do a PhD at all. Luckily, it worked out in the end. And so I started looking for a topic, and Bitcoin was not as sexy as it is nowadays. Indeed, I started as a researcher instead of a PhD student because, well, we weren't sure at the time that this would turn out to be a good research topic at all. So. It sort of picked up speed, and a year later, we were both fascinated by the possibilities of this and by how successful the research was going. So we made it a full PhD student position, and the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah. So if you go to a Bitcoin meetup today, I mean, there can be hundreds of people, right? Depending on where you go. But how was it back then?
Yeah, it was just four of us. It was quite an interesting meetup because it was just we posted on the forum that we would be interested in doing a meetup and just talk about technology. And so we met up at an Irish pub, and we just talked over a few beers for hours and hours on end, and decided to make it a regular thing. And yeah, we still have a picture from that one that I proudly carry wherever I go. Yeah, it was quite interesting. Now we sort of all went separate ways, but it all started with Bitcoin.
Since, I mean, you've been in this space for quite a long time, probably longer than anyone else I know. What have you seen change in the last few years? I mean, what were the most obvious changes?
Oh, a lot has changed. So one of the major changes that I see is that there is a certain amount of frustration that is mounting with the scalability as we try to solve that issue. And that later gave on to this whole issue with the block size increase, the small blockers, the big blockers, and generally speaking, this whole discontent with the current situation where it's kind of hard to sort of discuss these technical issues with everybody in the community without some people getting upset that the promises that they sort of bought into are no longer true.
Mm-hmm. Do you also feel like that? I mean, do you feel that Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, this whole space, do you feel they have lost some of their original spirit in the recent years?
I don't think so. I mean, most of the early adopters were very clear on what the limits of the system are, and so we sort of started very early on to address them, even if people said, yeah, that's not going to be an issue. So we always knew that there are these limits and that we should try to address them as early as possible. It's taken longer than we would have liked to, but I think that we now have a very solid understanding of what these limits are and how to solve them.
Have you convinced maybe people to learn more about cryptocurrencies or to get involved in this space themselves?
I try not to get people into cryptocurrencies at all. I am absolutely excited about this. It's not a matter of excitement, but this is, after all, a very very volatile space, and I get the feeling that I annoy people quite easily when I start talking about cryptocurrencies, because I can actually drone on and on and on about this topic. So I usually have people come to me and ask for specific things, rather than trying to go out and convert everybody to the gospel of Bitcoin. So I try not to be a cryptocurrency missionary, but rather the place where people can get information if they need to.
Information about what the technology is and what it can do for us. I mean,
yes, I think it's very necessary to have people that actually have the technical background and tell and be able to discern a good use case from a bad use case currently, because the whole blockchain space is so overhyped. That it's kind of hard for non-technical people to discriminate between a good use case and a bad use case, that generates a whole lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or fear of missing out. and it usually just means that that you need to have additional information and that you need to think about what you're doing and sort of make up your mind before jumping into cryptocurrencies. This, after all, is a very volatile investment if you're looking at it from an investment point of view, and so you should not do that in a hurry, and you shouldn't do that with money that you can't spare. So yeah, those are basically my two advices. Don't get exposed to too much fear of missing out, and don't sort of make gut decisions, and only ever do that with money you can spare.
It's always very hard to give investment advice, and disclaimer, we're not doing that here.
Absolutely, yes. I should mention that I'm absolutely a techie and not an investment guy, and I really respect people that are in it for the tech and not for the monetary incentive, but I totally get the monetary incentive as well.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable what this space has become. I mean, at the very beginning, most people didn't really take it serious. And now you have big investors, you have pension funds looking into these asset classes, even though there's still a lot of uncertainty and also security issues around them. You had at some point Bitcoin stolen from you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was, how many was it? 10,000 Bitcoins?
9,222, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, almost 10,000.
Wow. And when was that?
That must have been my birthday, 2012. Yes, I think 2012. Yeah, it was a really nice birthday present.
How did that happen?
It's at the time I was just starting my research, and one of the first things that I did was basically just map out how information flows in the Bitcoin network. And part of that research basically meant that I would try to accelerate how information flows, and so I basically just took my laptop at work and was forwarding. I was connected to a large part of the network, and I was forwarding information as fast as I could with a custom implementation of Bitcoin. And yeah, so some of the block explorers were showing my ETH address as being the origin for all of these blocks. And so rumors started flying that ETH Zurich is just joined the mining game, and the Swiss government tries to shut down Bitcoin. And so people started looking around, and at the time we were also working on another project called BitThief, which is a BitTorrent client to a file sharing client. But people naturally assumed that it had something to do with Bitcoin. And so now, besides trying to disrupt the Bitcoin network by being big in the mining game, we were also stealing other people's funds, apparently. And so, yeah, people started looking around, and and somebody figured out that I had my SSH, my secure shell server listening there, and I also had the same password that was leaked a few weeks before on a website, was still being used there. So they basically just connected, then connected to my work laptop, and then connected from my work laptop to my home laptop. And my home laptop had the private keys on it. So back then the wallet.dat file wasn't being encrypted. And I was just starting to move the coins into an air-gapped setup where all the keys are kept separate from the internet, but hadn't really started that process. And afterwards, I didn't need to, because the coins were gone.
Were those your coins, or were those the coins of the university?
No, those were mine. As I mentioned, I started mining in 2009 when a virtual machine somewhere on a cloud server was sufficient to actually mine quite a few Bitcoins. Yeah, I also had to explain at some point to the university security staff that these were not mined using university resources. Um, and that quickly moved on to how can we ensure that these resources aren't being misused, and so I sort of became their advisor for these issues. Um, but yeah, it's those were my coins, and we never actually bought any coins with the university funds. That would have been a big no-no for ethical standards.
Yes, I guess. How did you mine them back then? I mean, did you have a big mining rig or was it just a laptop?
Oh, it was just a VMware virtual machine sitting somewhere in the cellar. And yeah, no special hardware needed whatsoever. It was even a virtualized CPU.
Oh,
So
wow. Early days, clearly.
those were the days. Yes, we didn't know this stuff would actually be worth anything. So yeah, we weren't really good with security back then.
Yeah, I mean, the more conversation I have with people in this space, the more I realize that it was by no means clear that this would ever end up where we are today. I mean, even very early adopters, some of them, say they had no clue that this would ever become as big as it has become.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we as early adopters were always joking that one day we would have one Bitcoin and $1 being having value parity, and this was actually a big joke for quite some time, and then it happened, and we were just looking at our screens incredulously, and we're like, okay, so now this happened. Oops.
When did that perception change, you think? I mean, when did it change for you where you all of a sudden thought, maybe there is something, something bigger than just a science experiment?
For me, it still is a big science experiment. I mean, what intrigues me is the technical innovation and sort of the possibilities and the challenges that we are facing. It's nice that Bitcoin has reached a global audience, and it's nice that these Bitcoins now have a value. But what's most valuable for me is basically the technical exploration and the technical challenges that we have there. So it still is what I started off with, this very interesting concept and this very interesting technology, and we still learn new things every day, right? This is such a fast moving place. And we still haven't explored the full capabilities of this system. So that's what keeps me on my toes, and that's what most of the people that I know are interested in.
Most people I meet in this space, I mean, even people who made lots of money, they were never into it for the money. I mean, they got into it for ideology or because they were really interested in it. But nobody was speculating back then, or thought like, oh, wow, this is going to make me a millionaire. So that I find quite cool.
Yeah, it's also the most honest way to approach this, right? I mean, all of this could stop existing any day, and we would still be proud to have worked on this, right?
When we spoke about a year ago for the documentary film, you said a thing that quite stuck with me, and you said this is a bottom-up movement, and this is something made by us geeks. It's not top-down, it's not a bank or a government, but just everybody, a coder, a programmer, can do something that impacts the world.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about it? How do you feel about this now?
I still think that this rings true even today. It started out from a need or a curiosity from us tech people. and from a need from users, and we sort of have this ground movement that came up with this technology, and that is now challenging for the establishment to understand or to integrate. But I think in the end we all will benefit from its existence.
Yeah. Before you said that you feel this vision, the original vision, has been diluted a little bit or lost, maybe even. How do you feel about new developments? For example, this whole ICO craze or all the new coins that are coming up. How do you feel about that?
Honestly, I don't like them that much, because they sort of piggyback onto this whole grassroots movement to sort of follow their own agenda. I think ICOs definitely have a place in the financing world. They are a great way for a company to acquire funds to sort of get started. But at the same time, they are being used as a way to sidestep existing regulation, to attract money from what some people would call unrefined investors, or investors that are not aware of the risks that they are getting involved with, and people that are basically just pouring in their hard-earned cash into something, into some promise that people make to them, which is not even a promise, because you don't get any guarantee of success in return. You don't get a stake in the company. You don't get any sort of privileges from your investment. So yeah, that's what we usually have in securities, is that you actually have some leverage onto the company, whereas ICOs are very set on not giving you any of these advantages. Some of them really are good investments, and some of them make it very clear that this is a security and this is an investment in a company, and also call out the potential losses and the risks involved with investing in it. But some of them actually go out of their way to hide these facts from potential investors, to create this fear of missing out by creating very short timelines and being very, very coy about their internal structure, and not releasing this information that any sort of VC investor would ask right away from a potential investment, right? So I usually advise against an ICO, because there is this risk of being associated with all of the scams that are out there. But I do see it as a useful investment vehicle. But we absolutely need some additional rules on how to promote these, and who to promote these to, and what the minimum information requirements are to sort of give the investors all the information needed to make an informed decision.
Let's take a quick break for a message from our sponsors. Crypto Storage is part of the Crypto Finance Group, providing services for professional financial intermediaries and therefore bridging the gap between traditional markets and blockchain technology. The storage solution offered by Crypto Storage raises market standards by introducing a new security paradigm, which features 2 layers of dedicated and redundant hardware devices. This setup allows for a dedicated, independent, and highly flexible multi-signature framework. All transactions can be independently reviewed and approved on a dedicated tamper-proof hardware. The hardware security module, the tamper-proof signing devices, and the tailored software solution are all developed by leading Swiss providers with vast experience in finance and IT security. To learn more, visit www.cryptostorage.ch. It's sometimes funny, I think. A lot of these investments in ICOs or in crypto in general are just the pure opposite of what a traditional investor would do.
Yeah, absolutely. The one of the fundamental rules of investment is don't rush into something that you haven't cleared up for yourself. So do your due diligence, and if it still looks like a good, promising investment, then do it. But don't let others pressure you into doing an investment. The more open an investment is about pros and cons, the higher you can, the better you can gauge the opportunity there. From a purely speculative point of view, ICOs might be a good thing because there is a lot of money to be made with these huge price swings and pre-sale, not pre-sale, and discounts here and left and right. But I see what happens with most of these ICOs. I regularly get invites to pre-sales where you can get 80 to 90% off, and I usually just mark them as spam and throw them away, because these huge discounts to sort of get you to endorse a project are without any other differentiating feature. It's just dishonest in my point of view.
And it's also, I think it's counter the spirit of this whole bottom-up movement, right? That you mentioned at the beginning, where you said it's a flat structure, and it's not about rushing into things and creating lots of money that separates this person from others. It's about an inclusive field. And sometimes I feel the perception of this whole cryptocurrency and token economy space has really suffered because of these ICOs and the whole spirit that came with it.
Yeah, I think so. Some people will definitely get burned by ICOs and then ask for intervention by the regulator, and that may give us some unwanted attention, and we know the regulator is not going to be very selective about what to prohibit. They might be tempted to just prohibit the entire cryptocurrency space, and that would be a huge step backwards. Now, the SEC and the Swiss FINMA have been very selective in what they look at, and I absolutely applaud that approach, because it means that they sort of try to make this informed decision about what is good and what is bad, and not just take out the biggest hammer and try to smash the whole thing.
Do you think that risk is real?
Well, it would be a setback. It would be a setback both in perception as well as our ability to use cryptocurrencies in our day-to-day life. We're having a very hard time to get away from the perception that Bitcoin is just for drugs and illicit activities. There's far better options for that. Fiat cash being one of the examples there. But this perception is still very much present in pop culture. So if we have a government that tries to squash this entire space, then this will create the perception that this is indeed not a good investment, or not a good technology in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Do you see any signs of that happening at all?
Well, you hear a lot of rumors about this government now moving against this cryptocurrency, or that government now not moving anymore against this cryptocurrency, but very, very little that is actually substantiated. I don't think it's going to happen um, overnight, and I don't think. Well, we might be in a safe place now, where we sort of have enough traction that this is hard to destroy, but it's still possible.
What might a scenario like this look like? I mean, would it be a bad actor where maybe, let's say, pension funds jumped into this and then lost billions of dollars of people's pensions based on some scam coin or something like this? Or what kind of scenario would you imagine could lead to the death of maybe Bitcoin or the whole cryptocurrency space?
Yeah, I mean, pension funds are definitely one thing to look out for. If there is any kind of movement in that direction, I will definitely try to make my voice heard against that.
But it's happening. I mean, that is happening right now, right? I mean, endowments are looking into maybe investing. You have all these institutional investors pushing into the space, the big hedge funds who were serving these institutional investors. So
yeah, right. But I mean those are mostly voluntary investments. I don't want my pension fund to depend on a cryptocurrency space. Well, I don't want to be the cryptocurrency space to be a speculative space only. I want it to be a currency. But we'll see how that turns out.
a currency where you could basically go and buy an apple or a sandwich for Bitcoins in the shop.
Yeah, that would be great. And I mean it can continue to be an investment, but it should be an investment just like you diversify your funds into US dollars or euros or Swiss francs. It shouldn't be like buying Apple stocks. But yeah, volatility currently makes cryptocurrencies very attractive to investments because they sort of always have the promise of having a huge return of investment, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, which makes it very difficult to use as a currency. So
exactly.
Yeah. Have you seen any promising moves in that direction, that make maybe Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies more cash-like or more money-like? Have you seen anything like this that excited you?
Well, I mean, the more Main Street kind of use cases we can build on top of Bitcoin, the less volatile it becomes, right? So if again we start this ground movement and actually start accepting Bitcoin for our goods and services, then we both need the non-volatility, but we also contribute to it not being as volatile anymore. So I think the more bars that I can buy my coffee from with Bitcoin, or the more gardeners I can pay for Bitcoin, the more stable the currency as a whole will be.
Mm-hmm. But now it's less, right? Because of the high transactions fees. So it's hard to go buy a coffee.
I don't think it's as expensive anymore. We had a huge spike back in January, February, where yes, we had fees of $5 to $10 per transaction. But things have calmed down since then quite a lot, and most of the, well, I don't want to point fingers, but some of the traffic was definitely spam that was intended to actually drive up the fees. And I mean the current rather low fees are proof to that. Yeah, I mean we sort of are back to an acceptable level of fees for on-chain transactions. Then again, on-chain transactions are expensive, are naturally expensive because they are. Because this is a shared medium that everybody's trying to access. So we probably shouldn't have all of the coffees in the world being bought on chain. Yeah. And that's where initiatives like Lightning come into play, and we actually start talking about off-chain payments as well.
Are you working on anything now that where you said this could really lift up maybe the the adoption of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, or just make it a better tool that can actually have an impact in people's lives?
Well, I mean, Lightning is an extension to the to the use cases that we can currently serve with on-chain payments. So as such, we open up new use cases such as buying coffee from a barista, or doing micropayments between devices, and we open up this whole use case of Internet of Things, devices paying other devices, or pay as you go kind of subscriptions. One of the use cases that is very near and dear to my heart for Lightning is for example the ability to compensate content creators for their work they have put into on the internet, for example. Currently, if I write articles for a living, if I work for the New York Times, for example, then I work on a subscription-based payment system, right? Where people have a subscription, they pay every month, and I, in return, create content for that. That might work for a big outlet like the New York Times, but smaller content providers are having a hard time getting people to sign up for a subscription. So the only option that is left is sort of the ad space. So they add advertisements into their content, and get, well, some breadcrumbs for it, right? And we see that both for written content or audio content, or we see that for video content. And every time that YouTube changes their compensation model, there's a huge outcry from content producers, because they are now cut out from their revenue stream. So this ability to basically tip a content producer for their services, or pay to get access to an article on demand, and only the article that I'm interested in, that is very attractive to me, because it sort of shifts the compensation power away from ad companies that may get 5 cents from upstream and will send 1 cent forward downstream. And it will also remove the need for these very extensive profiles that ad companies now create about us, just because they need these profiles to tailor advertisements to us. Whereas if I go to a website and I pay for the content that I need, nobody ever needs to create a profile about me. The only thing that the content creator learns about me is that I like this content. So this is one of the use cases where I see Lightning or Bitcoin as a whole contributing a whole lot to this whole democratization of the content space. Yeah, and I mean, every time I watch a YouTube video and I see these like 10-second ads, and only then I can skip the ad, I would be willing to pay a few cents every time I can skip that.
Yes, absolutely. What is your view on these other applications of the blockchain, right? Or of blockchain technology, distributed ledger technology, that does not necessarily involve Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency, but that focuses more on the whole blockchain technology? Where do you see that going?
Yeah, that sort of leads us into the rabbit hole of what actually is a blockchain, because what people nowadays call under the term blockchain is a very diverse set of technologies that sort of spans a whole spectrum of use cases. So, I mean, for the Bitcoin blockchain has a very specific context in which it is sensible. It's a context where we don't know who the other participants are, where we don't know how many there are, and we don't know whether all of them have expressed their opinions about any kind of operation. And that leads us to making some very specific design choices, like, for example, having proof of work. So if on the other hand we do have a way to know who is participating and who has a say in our decisions, like for example what is being promoted as permissioned ledger or DLTs or permissioned blockchains, then we can use a completely different set of tools, and where we can actually have an explicit vote between the participants, and once everybody has voted, we can take a certain decision. That's basically classical consensus, like we had it for the last 30 years now. People still call it blockchain, but in my opinion, the blockchainy aspect in here is merely having a common interface between the different participants, and having a common interchange format between these participants. So yeah, it sort of depends on what you call blockchain. Whether these things are actually sensible. I do think that there is a need, for example, to have a federation of banks and a common interchange format to exchange information about a shared ledger, and to have this shared ledger in the first place. But I don't think that a Bitcoin-like blockchain would be very sensible for a setting where people actually sort of know each other.
But, can you really separate blockchains from cryptocurrencies? I mean, is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's the entire context that makes sort of all of these fall into place, right? And if you change the context in which you use the technology, it may lose some of its validity.
Okay, cool. Let's talk a little bit about your current project, if you want, or just something that you think is important. People should know about cryptocurrencies, should know about Bitcoin, or all of these blockchain technologies.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we're making massive progress towards enabling all of these use cases that we were talking about, and actually realizing the full potential of Bitcoin as a currency that people were always promised, wrongfully so, but now we are creating them after the fact. And yeah, I'm actually looking really forward to having Lightning out there and being used, and hopefully people will come in and start using it. We're currently looking for good applications that we can that people are interested in running on Lightning, and see if we can actually bootstrap this network from zero. So and looking forward, we also started working on future versions of Lightning and off-chain protocols in general. We just published a paper 2 days ago about what we see as a potential future version of Lightning, and how we can implement other use cases as well. So this is a very fast-moving space, and it's absolutely amazing what we can do both off-chain and on-chain. we have many new things that are coming into Bitcoin or are being discussed currently. There's proposals for Graftroot and Taproot, and I can't even name all of them. All very, very interesting innovations that might open up new stuff and improve the system as it is today.
Yesterday, I was in Zug, and I spoke with the mayor there of the town that was the first to accept Bitcoin payments, right, for as official payments for their permits and stuff like this that you could previously only buy in Swiss francs. And he said that this whole Bitcoin experiment or this Bitcoin initiative that he led, and he's now, I think, 62 years old, he said that's the most exciting thing he ever did in his career.
Oh yeah, I was there when they officially started, and it was an incredibly nice roundtable, and we had a lot of fun chats, and this is definitely a really interesting development, and kudos to him for starting this all.
What do you think would you be doing if there weren't any Bitcoin or if there weren't any cryptocurrencies?
I would be sad. If I'd not known about Bitcoin, I'd probably just be a drone somewhere working on code and not talking to you probably.
Maybe. Who knows, right? Who knows? I mean, it's the same with me. I mean, I'm so glad I stumbled into this space, and
every once in a while I definitely do have to pinch myself and see if I'm not sleeping or dreaming. It's
well, let's hope we never wake up if it is a dream.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time today, Chris. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for joining us today. More info on our guests and our sponsors is in the show notes of this episode and on the podcast website, theblockchainandus.com. To help people find this podcast, it's important that you download, subscribe, and give it a top rating and review on iTunes or on the podcast platform of your choice. I'm Manuel Staggers, and I thank you very much for listening.